back to the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Before we get to today's show, don't forget it's 2 Pointers in your cart at wenergy.com for 10% off your W Energy order. Welcome back. Hope everybody's doing all right. Wanted to talk today with Grayson Hill, resident, whatever you want to call now at this point, return guest to talk about midseason awards. This was a very popular show last year. People really enjoyed this one. I tried my best to put as much thought as I could into this one as well. We're going to hit MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, Coach of the Year, and then also they've added the names of these trophies, which I'm going to refuse to talk about. Jerry West Clutch Player of the Year Award trophy. I hope I said that right. All NBA teams, I think they're a fun conversation, not necessarily for now, but to review later. All rookie first team, and then we've got some fun awards I'll save for the end as well. A couple seconds here before we get rolling. How are you?
Doing great. Big Thunder win last night, so excited to jump into some NBA and dip my toes into college basketball as well.
Yeah, Cowboys Niners knew what they were doing. That's what I get for doing a pod at 10 o'clock. But Cowboys Niners knew what they were doing. They ended it perfectly, where as soon as I clicked off and I hit NBAapp.com or whatever on the TV, went straight to that game, and I was like, this is perfect. There's 6 minutes left. Commence back and forth with you for an hour. So, and it was awesome. I got to watch 2 of my favorite teams to watch this year play. We'll be talking about them over and over. Not these 2 teams specifically. We'll be talking about them consistently for the next couple of months about different reasons. So today, midseason awards. Last year, obviously doing it near the All-Star break. I know the technicality of we just crossed over the 44-game mark, whatever, 42-game mark. So whatever, right? It worked out. We're actually doing this a week earlier than expected. So without further ado, I've been pretty vocal on a lot of these things, but without kind of like saying it. So I'll be reserved in some of these opinions, but I do at least want to talk about them. Obviously, what people are here for is MVP. I have been thinking the MVP is this guy forever. Where have you went with MVP to start right out?
I put aside several factors that I think shouldn't matter, but I think ultimately will, unfortunately. I just don't know how much it will matter, but voter fatigue, I don't think you can really discredit a guy for that. So give me Nikola Jokic as the MVP. And again, we mentioned last night he did not play and the Thunder won. So if you want any indication of how much he means to that team, I love my Thunder, but they should not be beating Denver. So without him, that team is not nearly the same. And that among many reasons, almost averaging a triple-double, presence as impactful on the court as anybody in the league. And I think that, it's night and day with and without him. So give me the big man in Denver as the MVP again.
Yeah, I hate to be like, oh, wow, we're only going to talk about this for about 3 minutes. But I have been preaching it all year through and through. And 25 points per game, only 33 and a half minutes per game, which I just learned right this moment, 11 rebounds per game, and 9.9 assists per game. Literally, he's going to do it. I fully believe it. 1.4 steals, too, which is awesome. 0.6 blocks. Obviously, you're going to have turnovers when you're having the ball that much in your hand. Only 15 shot attempts per game. At this point, it's turning into and this is, I guess, where I'll save myself from a rant, but it's turning into a point where I think he's just, like, pretending each game is, like, a different quest, and he's just like, you know what? Today, I'm not going to score 25. I'm going to try to have 19 assists. And then he proceeds to do it twice in the same week. I don't understand it. And I'm like, you know what? I think voter fatigue is stupid. I'm with you. It doesn't surmount to anything historically. Like, there's no reason. Honestly, you can't look back at any other case since Larry Bird where we've had 3 times. I mean, even with Jordan, there was guys that did deserve it. Like Barkley deserved it in '93 and that kind of thing. Yeah, obviously, Olajuwon was there when he wasn't there. But I really think this is the first time we're ever going to have a real sense of voters fatigue, unless you want to really count the third Giannis here. But I don't think he was going to win it anyway. But I really think this is the first time we're going to see a true potential voters fatigue since Larry Bird. So why that's the case, I think it's stupid. I think it's the way the narrative MVP award is driven now. I hate to be old guy here, but it is what it is. It's stupid, and I think he's deserving. If that was the case and we assumed it was going to happen, is there any other, or like maybe who's 1A or B?
I mean, I think you got to look across the other 1 seed and their leader in Jason Tatum. I think that what they've been able to do with the distractions off the court coming into the year, the East is no slouch when we look at the West as a wide open gauntlet that's currently led by Denver and Jokic. But I think that for everything that could have gone wrong in Boston for reasons far and away from basketball, I think what they've done to this point in the season's incredible. And I think that, Joe Mazzulla deserves a lot of credit for it, but also their number one guy in Tatum, I think deserves a lot of flowers for putting them at this point too.
Before people say anything about the whole Luka argument, I don't think Dallas is good enough yet. I think come season end, if they
I'm
end up
there
being
too. Yeah.
if they're a top 6 seed, we have to hold them to the same standard we held Jokic to the last 2 years, being a 6 seed, multiple times, and just dragging the team there. And if he does that, then he's probably going to win it. I think honestly, it's Jokic's award to win if Luka doesn't be a top 6 seed, which is kind of where I've ended up mentally. That's just the same. I want to draw a comparison to Jokic. There it is, but. I think regardless, what we're going to end up seeing is like the slugfest between, honestly, who gets hurt first. And I hate to even say that because I think that's genuinely what's going to be the difference maker. My point with Jokic all offseason and all throughout the last 40 games was if he takes a step back, they're still going to be a top 3 team. And if he takes a step back or gets hurt, then it's going to be Jason Tatum's award to win. And that was kind of like week 1. I was like, I didn't want to go, we talked week 1, so it wasn't like we were on here. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, Tatum's the MVP. I don't even remember if I said that or not. But like he was the MVP in week 1. And I think one of us brought it up and one of us said that, and I agreed with it. So I think it's fair point to say that Tatum's probably the most deserving. Giannis has taken a step back. I'm looking at points per game on StatMuse. I'm not looking at any other ranking to make it as unbiased as possible. But like Embiid's 33.6, Luka's 33.6, Tatum's 31.1. SGA's 30, and that's kind of why I'm trying to be unbiased. LeBron's 29.8. I guess it went down after last night, which makes no sense. KD at 29.7. After that doesn't make any sense. But there's a lot of guys deserving of it. So I think MVP was kind of the easy answer, and I'm kind of glad we agreed on it because I didn't think there was any real discourse that was natural. It was going to be forced.
Right.
It was like, oh, but why not Luka? This isn't the pod for that, unfortunately. Rookie of the year, I think, unfortunately means the same thing. Who do you have for Rookie of the year?
I will go with consensus again, just because I think consensus is correct here. It's Paolo Banchero. I mean that this Magic team, they just beat Boston a matter of minutes ago. The return of Jonathan Isaac, a story that has unfortunately been a lot involving Isaac not playing, but he's now a part of that. Honestly, pretty dangerous Orlando team. They've got some wins that you kind of raise your eyebrow at, and I think that's really the catalyst being the new guy, number 1 overall pick, as it should be, in all honesty. So I think that, once again, can't really make this too fascinating just because of how good he's been to this point. I love my guy Jalen Williams in OKC, but I mean, this really isn't that close. It's got to be Paolo.
We'll talk about some other deserving people further down. We do all rookie first team. I think that'll be where it'll be nice to talk about others there. But I will say that the fact that he was like, what, plus 150 to win it before the year, like,
right.
That was kind of a telltale sign, like Vegas knows all. And I was kind of like, okay, sure, opportunity and just sheer expectation-wise, it's probably Paolo. I think Mathurin made a huge push the week or 2 that Paolo was down. Like, that was a really, really big opportunity. And obviously, Paolo came back and acted like nothing happened. So I don't think there's even a conversation here. And I hate to say that too, but we'll talk about some of the other deserving ones in a few minutes when we get down to all rookie first team, because I think that was even a pretty set list, but it was basically the guys that aren't going to win it other than Paolo. So any other rookie or anything about Paolo? Actually, I'll say this. Let me say this before I move on, because I would be remorseful if I didn't. I think the Jonathan Isaac thing was a really interesting point, because obviously we know Paolo's there, and Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz, and obviously I'm forgetting people. Wendell Carter, right? There's this plethora. Franz Wagner, right? I don't want to forget anybody, but that basically hit them all. That is all, just a plethora of potential young talent that they have there. Bol, etc. It's gotten bad when Rockets fans are starting to question if the Magic have a better core, which ultimately I think they probably do. When I ended up on Rockets Twitter,
I mean,
it's a kind of a scary conversation if you're a Rockets fan, but I don't want to drag them through the mud. I'm friends with too many Rockets fans, so it is what it is, and I kind of just ignored those tweets. Didn't like either side of them because I didn't want to draw a line in the sand. So Paolo deserves every bit of the conversation. It is at least interesting to bring up that he is kind of what propelled that case. Obviously, Wagner's great play as well, and then Isaac's return. So that's a different conversation for a different day, but Paolo is deserving of it. Anything else with Paolo before we move on to Defensive Player of the Year, where I hope there's some discourse? I hope.
Right. I mean, it's nice to see a guy that was a little bit of a surprise, number 1 overall, proving that he should go there. I mean, I think that we've seen a lot of promising young guys. Like you mentioned, all rookies going to be a fun conversation in a minute. It's nice to have, in my mind, 5 guys that are pretty deserving. I wouldn't say clearly. There's some discussions to be had towards that 4th and 5th spot, but it's nice to see this rookie class kind of come into its own even half a season into their young careers.
It sucks for the expectation of next year's class because it's like if any of those guys average 10 points per game, it's going to be like
Right.
a
That bar is so
fallacy.
high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate it, and I hope that we level out the rookie expectations eventually, but I don't see that changing. So, defensive player of the year, I will throw mine at you because I think you probably agree, and I don't want you to agree, but that's just the fair thing because he has started to play enough games after only playing 58 in his rookie year, 57 in his second year, 11, 78 last year. This player, Jaren Jackson Jr., has been the defensive line. Dang it. Really? Again? God.
I have all their names. I did
Okay.
have.
All right. I would
Yeah.
at least like to have a conversation. I do want to also bring it up. I think it is awesome. If people are bored for basketball conversation one day, just look up people's basketball reference page and look at their nicknames. This is a episode of Today I Learned. His nickname obviously is Triple J. That is the very first one. That is very obvious. Shout out to him for also having Jaren on Instagram. That's it. Just Jaren. His nickname is Block Panther, which is my transition to bring up why I think he's been so phenomenal. He's averaging 3.3 blocks per game. He did lead the league last year in blocks per game because in Basketball Reference, thank goodness they have the little bold stat where you can, thank goodness you can tell it's a league leader. Somehow 3.3 is not league leading, but I think they only mean for the total of the season. But 3.3 blocks per game, 1 steal. And just overall, when you watch that team play before earlier in the year without him, and then you watch them with him now, they're a completely different team in the way they play him in general, anywhere within 10 feet of the cup, but also the way they play him through drop coverage and the way they can switch him onto basically any position except for whatever the team's fastest guard is. And it's just been an unbelievable watch for the Grizzlies team as a whole, where their team defense also went up 10 points when he came back as well, 10 spots. So, Jaren Jackson Jr., but that's enough about him. I'd love to hear a conversation about someone else. Please, God, for the love of this episode not being stupid and boring.
It's a little bit baked in recency bias, but I think what Nick Claxton's doing in Brooklyn, I think just pure effort wise, he's getting some flowers lately. I think obviously it's going to happen over a prolonged period of time to really approach defensive player of the year territory. But as far as a guy I could mention the periphery right now and, quickly approaching a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., Brooke Lopez, maybe a bit of wishful thinking there. Another guy excelling with blocks this year. But I have to say front runner right now. I'm going to take Triple J. But I think, again, Claxton, a guy a bit like Mathurin, is kind of heating it up here at a point where it's good for his own self. And then as far as, broad recognition with the awards, it couldn't happen at a better time. So, this Nets team's tough to figure out. No Durant. They're kind of up and down. They just beat the Warriors the other night. Just, make that make sense. But it's pretty much Kyrie and guys like Claxton trying to pick up the slack with Durant out. So I think that, there's opportunities to be had in Brooklyn, like I said, with Durant out. So Claxton's been a guy that's kind of shown up and elevated his game to try and keep that team treading water before their best player does return and they can really make a serious run in the East. I don't know if that necessarily happens, but he's giving it his all night in, night out, especially on the defensive end, and it's showing for sure.
Yeah, I don't even want to go any further than Nick Claxton and Jaren Jackson Jr. because I think at this point those are the two, and I'm sure that there's a worthy conversation to be had about a myriad of different guys. Like OG Anunoby had a great case about 10 games ago, but haven't heard much there. They've been losing games with him in the lineup, with him as the primary defender on most primary scores in the East. But obviously, you can't expect him to stop Tatum and Durant and guys like that. But I think for the sake of the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. does deserve it and has deserved it for a couple of years in that conversation, I think he's warranted of at least getting my midseason award nod. And I hate to just say, like, oh, Nick Claxton doesn't, but what Jaren Jackson Jr. does for the Grizzlies, and I don't care what their on-off stats were last year with and without him and yada, yada, I don't want to hear it. Like, what he does for them defensively and the way he's able to switch and the way he's able to be their most active defender despite being a post player, which is something we're starting to see a little bit more again, where you have your Giannis's of the world that have won it recently. Marcus Smart won it last year. Draymond Green's not exactly the most dominant post defender, but he's still a defensive player of the year. So I'm glad to see that there is a big making that much of an impact on the defensive end of the floor, which is why I would give him the award. Unfortunately, Sixth Man of the Year award is next. And I say unfortunately because my preseason pick, and I'm going to hit it this way, I'm going to go backwards, at least with the current, I hate to use odds, but I think they do help tell a story of the general public a little bit. And plus, I'm not afraid of talking about gambling on the show. So Norman Powell was my preseason pick because I figured if the Clippers were rolling, then he was the obvious pick. And then either everybody decided to not play, be hurt, choose not to play, suck, or otherwise. So I've given you 5 reasons why Norman Powell has played more minutes than he should have been qualified to play. He still is qualifiable, according to Basketball Reference, but he's plus 1,700. So I figured, you know what? Fair bet. I like it. I think it'd be fun to sprinkle some money on it. That is a courtesy of FanDuel. But Malcolm Brogdon is plus 275, and then the guy that right now is favored at minus 150 is Russell Westbrook. And unfortunately, I think there's no contest, which is why I think we're going to go 4 for 4, and I'm going to just be like, this pod sucks, and why I wanted to, the more I built this pod out to bring to you. And I went, you know what? Let's talk about all NBA teams because I think we'll actually argue. Let's talk about these fun awards because I think we'll actually have good conversation because I knew that we would probably go 4 for 4 on this and maybe even 5 for 5 on most improved. But long-winded to say that I don't think there's anyone else that deserves this award right now. He's averaging 15.7 points per game, 7.8 assists per game, 6.6 rebounds per game. And ever since he took over that role, whether they're winning or not, obviously a lot of injuries in and out of the lineup, he's been the consistent piece this year, which I think has been a huge difference maker for them not completely tanking and being positive. And I'm trying to figure out the best basketball constructive way to put it. They just haven't been good, but they've been good enough that he hasn't been the reason. And I think that's a big testament to just the way he accepted the role. And I think that does matter in this case when there's no clear front runner. I do think he deserves it regardless of what they're going to do with Rui Hachimura, which that's the first time I'm saying that on air because that obviously just happened at 3 p.m. So long-winded. Where are you at with Russell Westbrook? I'm assuming it's a yes, and we can move on.
Oh, I've got him slotted there too. I think that, I don't know what his preseason odds were, but I bet it was longer than 17-1. I just think that really that has sort of saved the Lakers in that, the Anthony Davis injury, unfortunately, it's just kind of taken the ceiling down several notches with this team, but the floor could be much, much worse. If Westbrook refused this role, demanded a trade, did, whatever you want to say, the play didn't translate what they had hoped coming off the bench, but he's been excellent. I think that's a tough pill to swallow late in my opinion, a Hall of Famer's career. So I think that it just speaks to his resolve as a player and a teammate. A lot of things have been made of him and Durant, but I don't think Durant is going to make a move like this later in his career. We'll see. But I just think that, it's similar to his time in Washington where he was kind of the consistent factor. Last year, I think he's the only Laker to play just about every game. His availability is a big strength of his. He's had injuries in the past, thanks to now teammate Patrick Beverley, one of those times. But I think that, just being a constant presence, and especially as, guys like Hachimura try and come in and guide this team to a play-in or playoff berth, I think that, there's going to have to be consistent factors there. Obviously, LeBron, it's just LeBron James. He's been incredible this year. But having a guy in that second unit like Westbrook that's willing to do it as an active participant and still giving you the same effort he would as a starter, I think that's huge for this Lakers team. I'm happy to see them starting to turn a bit of a corner. Wild game last night against Portland. Got down huge in the second quarter, came back, won the game, I believe. I missed the final score, but I think that had a massive second half comeback and beat Portland last night. Westbrook, as usual, was one of the factors in that one. So I think that, don't write off this Lakers team just yet because they start clicking, get Anthony Davis back. Make some more tweaks as we approach the trade deadline, that this could be a team that, you laugh about and you tweet funny things about, and Inside the NBA has a joke or two about it, but they could actually win a playoff series or two, I think, if things all go perfectly.
Perfectly is the key word. I did look up because according to sportsbettingdime.com, November 10th was roughly, give or take, when they made the decision to go with the 6-man role very quickly into the year. It does not, unfortunately, this chart does not go back past November 10th, which I find odd. But he was plus 150, and he has been plus 150 like the entire average of the year. So wow. I would love to know what preseason was. If somebody can find that, tweet at both of us, one of us, either one of us, doesn't matter. But he's essentially been the favorite since November 10th, and I'm not shocked by it. Jordan Poole, Malcolm Brogdon, Benedict Mathurin, and somehow Benedict Mathurin listed twice. So I think all of those guys are worthy candidates, but I think we both laid out the case essentially why Russell Westbrook deserves it. There's a reason, and I don't think it's Darvin Ham deserves Coach of the Year. We'll talk about that in a second because of that decision change, but I think him embracing it is what's super important. And if the award is two guys, him and Malcolm Brogdon, his story is going to matter more. And at that point, I'm not projecting. This is what the way I do midseason awards is if the season was only 40 games, who would I have given the award to, or 44 games, whatever we stopped at now. I would give it to Russell Westbrook. So I think that's a fair way to do it. Most improved player, a award that quite literally, if you bet on this, I think you might be a sicko because, and there are sickos out there that bet on anything, but we bet on Gatorade color out of the Super Bowl winner anyway. So most improved player, who would you have right now? And I think there is a clear answer, which is why I think we're going to go 5 for 5.
I've done well to this point, I think, in being unbiased. But if I can't get first team All NBA by the end of this, I'll go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. As an alternate, if I got to take my Thunder out of this, I think Lauri Markkanen, what he's done in Utah, has been nothing short of incredible. So I think that picking from that pair, you truly can't go wrong. I think it's deserving and more deserving rather than deserving and non-deserving. So I think that these two guys out west have done incredibly well, both leading teams that are much, much better than expected. Neither won in the Wemby sweepstakes as we sit here late January, which is not where anyone had Utah or Oklahoma City, even personally. So I think that I'm going to go with my heart here in Shai, but I think that if I were to remove my Thunder from the equation, I think Lauri is the easy answer as an alternative.
Yeah, I think Lauri's where I went, unfortunately, as well, because I think what I kind of came, and you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, let's have this dialogue because A, I don't want people to be bored 20 minutes in, but B, it's worth it because I think Twitter is going to tell me one thing. Oh, well, how can a guy win most improved player when they're already that good? It's the Ja Morant argument last year. I thought it was stupid. It was It was Desmond Bane. I don't care what anyone says. I would have been the Desmond Bane voter if I had a vote. But he had 24.5 points per game to 30.7 now. We obviously know what that looks like in terms of a jump. But basically the same rebounds per game, basically the same assists per game. He's already about to pass here in the next, right after the All-Star break. I think the week of the All-Star break, he will pass his games played total as of then for the whole season last year. So that kind of tells you the position that the team feels like they're in. He's averaging 0.4 steals more, half a block more, only 0.2 turnovers per game, which I think shows a lot of efficiency in terms of better decision making, teammates making more, better decisions as well. Field goal attempts only went up 2, which I don't think is that bad, but efficiency went up 5%, which is just nuts. 5% more better from 3. I'm not even realizing some of this stuff as I'm reading it. 10% better from the free throw line. Now officially a 50, 35, 90 guy. Almost about to get, he's 400 minutes away from his minute total last year. So I think I think he gets it? That's a different question than me giving him an award at game 40. I think right now I have Lauri Markkanen only because of the sheer holy crap league impact, team impact. Not that Shai's team impact isn't great, but I think what Lauri all of a sudden just dragging this lifeless team that should have been a 15 or 14 seed to potentially, they really still might make the playoffs, not play in. That's right, that's a legitimate possibility. I think people are still underrating, which is why I think just for the sheer sake of, I think personally my belief in what SGA already was is the reason I would bump him, but I don't think that's out of the question because of what we saw with Ja Morant, which is why I think you have hope.
Right. If you want to look at I guess how much they've improved, it would go to Markkanen, and then what level they improved to. I feel like Shai's the answer there. And like I said, or you've said a couple of times now, the Ja Morant case is kind of bleeding into this year, and similar story, same guy, played at an all-star level, and now he's absolutely an all-star. We went from talking about all-star game to all-star starter in a year. So we're going to reward that, or a guy who went from, captain of the tank squad to now they might clear the play-in altogether. So I think that's a good way to put it. I agree.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. I've got a conversation with somebody. I think by the time this goes up, as long as we record on Monday, it'll still happen. So I've got a conversation with Riv Brown from Pick a Side Podcast talking about I don't want to spoil in case he listens, but one of his teams he likes to follow is the Thunder. And I have a question related to, and I'll tell you after recording so you know that no one else can hear until Monday, but it is a really good scenario to understand that this team still doesn't have Chet Holmgren. And if you're getting a player, and this is not turning into a Thunder, what this team can be thing, but that's literally what the conversation around SGA means right now. Obviously, the All-Star Game starters have, as of recording this Monday, January 23rd, being completely clear, all-star starters or all-star reserves have not been finally picked yet. I think votes for the starters that had ballots were due yesterday at midnight, but he essentially, that's the kind of level of conversation he's getting right now, the kind of pull, right? It's like, okay, you're not just a most improved player. To me is a double-edged sword. It's okay, you're improving as a player, but did you improve your team also? And I think that kind of gets underrated, and I think that's where I would get kind of murky if I had a vote. So I'm very, very careful and saying that, yes, SGA probably deserves it, but I think for the sheer jump of a player statistically and impact on his team combined, I think Laurie does deserve it, which technically means we went 5 for 5, which I was afraid of, which is why I think 30 minutes left after we get Coach of the Year. We'll have about 30 minutes left to hit all the other stuff that we at least should debate about. And in good reason, because the All-NBA teams, actually, the more I looked at them when I texted you, I, in quote, put, won't spend forever on these. And then I did them, and I went,
right. It's
never
easy
mind.
to, yeah.
Yeah, never mind. But Coach of the Year, we'll close it out with all the ballot awards, I called them. The ones that people were probably here to hear. Please don't click off after this. Coach of the Year, I went with Jacques Vaughn because the team hated Steve Nash. They fired him. They're top 3 in the East. I think there's other candidates, and I did find this hilarious article kind of laying out. I think it was from Action Sports Network. That was unbelievable. I'll link it if I can remember to. That basically laid out all of the historical cases on who's actually the legit favorites or candidates to win preseason, and it was hysterical that Doc Rivers was the second best choice. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I think it's funny. And then I looked at the Sixers record, forgot they were second in the East, and he actually could legitimately win Coach of the Year, which makes me want to throw up because I wanted him fired for the last 60 days, and I'm like, you know what, whatever. But I think Jacques Vaughn deserves it because the team plays for that guy like any other, and at this point, I don't care if it's your 2 best players dragging you. I really think there's a correlation to Nick Claxton looking like a defensive player of the year. And I think some of the scheme and I think just sometimes the change of scenery is always nice. And at this point, it's hard. There's no statistical argument for a Coach of the Year candidate. I just think there's sometimes you can look at the things that other guys did, like Nick Claxton, like Kevin Durant being an MVP candidate again, like the fact that Kyrie Irving isn't doing anything stupid off the court. I think that really does matter. But yeah, Jacques Vaughn is the reason for some of that stuff happening, and I think he's the Coach of the Year.
I also took a coach that entered into some turmoil out east, also a contender out east, but it's the coach of the 1 seed at the moment, and that's Joe Mazzulla. I just think that for this team to be where it is, considering they had Twitter burning down NBA-wise for all the wrong reasons, which is really the way you do it, honestly. I think that for them to be even off a weird loss to Orlando, 35-13, as we sit here, that's just incredible. I think that we've seen, particularly in Brooklyn, that you can have all the talent you want. If the coach isn't right, like we saw with Steve Nash, it doesn't matter, and you're going to find out really, really quickly. So I think this team could have crashed and burned. They could have really let the wheels fall off. And you've got all the talent in the world, a team that's fresh off the finals run. But I just think that to hold this team together, and you've got incredible veteran leadership in Al Horford, Marcus Smart, other guys. But I just think that from a head coaching perspective, given what he walked into, I think this is the most impressive coaching job we've seen this year. And I think that we may not necessarily see them go wire to wire in the East. They could get caught. There's several very, very good teams just behind them. Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Cleveland. I mean, that's just rattling teams off the top of my head. So I just think that, and again, I don't really want to say it's an advantage for him to have walked into like the biggest chaos situation in the NBA, but the way he's handled it and the like immediate ship riding that happened in Boston. I mean, if this team was 500 through 20 games, I mean, just imagine the tabloids. I mean, it's not New York bad, but that's a sports city that will let you hear it in a hurry if things are not going well. And I think from the jump,
they let you hear it even when they're 35-13. I mean, that's
right,
the scary part. And we wouldn't be here talking about midseason awards. We'd be talking about the implosion of the Celtics and having their window closed, which now look at it. I mean, it's stupid. For the sake of the fact that we did that GM exercise last time you were here. Wait, was that? Yeah, that was. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
okay.
That was.
So that was one of the more fun pods if people want to check that out. Somehow, if you care about NBA GMs over the last 2 decades, I really enjoyed that. I went back and listened to it a few months ago, and I was like, God, there were some really good GMs in the last 20 years. Besides the point, the way I looked at Coach of the Year, I told you there was no easy formula, and I think Mazzulla deserves it. So I want to, and the reason I'm glad you brought him up, because I think there's no way to go, okay, it's the players are the reason, like in the Nets case, like I went with Vaughn. it's like, oh, the player's reason for this guy being better or this team being better, right? Versus the coach. There's no statistical way to formulate that. So I just wanted to see how many legitimate candidates there were. So Detroit, no. Charlotte, no. Orlando, probably no.
Right.
Washington, no. Toronto, no. Chicago, no. Indiana, Rick Carlisle will be the first one I would even consider because they're 23 and 25, and I think they're going to finish 15th in the East, as most people probably would have or did. Rick Carlisle, does he have a legit chance if they make the play-in or playoff? Play-in, I guess, wouldn't be the case, but
Yeah, if they get Halliburton back and get heated up here, I would think it would require them retaining Miles Turner at that deadline,
and
which
44 games probably.
right,
45.
which may not prove to come to fruition. But I think that, like you mentioned, first guy with a chance, I think it's a good place to start.
Okay. Atlanta, no. I think that's dead obvious. That guy might not have a job by the time this pod's up on Wednesday. Right. I'm not giving it Tom Thibodeau. I'm not even going to hear the argument.
No, absolutely not.
Spoelstra, same thing. As much as I'd love to hear the argument, 26 and 22 for a Miami Heat team that has been injury riddled, and I just think there's eventually a karma you get when you A, don't have draft picks, and B, don't use them properly, and you decide to have to go with undrafted guys. Having 4 of them in your rotation, I don't want to hear any Spoelstra argument from any Heat fan. The Cavs, is Bickerstaff, is he enough of a impact on this team being there a few years now, or is this just the Donovan Mitchell effect and their defense being healthy?
I think it's attributable enough to Mitchell to where it kind of takes Bickerstaff out of at least the front runner conversation wise. Now, if you want to say guys with a chance, I think he definitely belongs on that list. But I just think, Donovan Mitchell has been, what a spark for this team. We talked about Avalanche as kind of a cute thing, a team that, came up short in the play-in. Jared Allen wasn't quite right to end the season. But now this team is, I wouldn't use contender quite yet. They've had guys in and out of the lineup. We rarely see this team at full strength, but this is a fun as hell team to watch, and I really hope that they stay healthy down the stretch.
Best part about you say that haven't seen them fully healthy yet is that they're 29 and 19, and
they're so good already.
Injuries, right, and the 2 fluke injuries. It's scary because that's 5th in the East right now, almost to the All-Star break. The funny part about the injuries is the fluke was a poke in the eye for Garland for 9.5 10 games, whatever it was.
Right.
Which is just stupid. The fact they lost him, I think they were like 7-3 in that stretch. Brooklyn, we talked about Vaughn. The reason I brought this up was Mike Budenholzer. Not having Chris Middleton for 40 games, basically, at this point. I think it's 38, but 40 games without Middleton, and honestly a pretty lackluster roster around him. Again, I have been saying this for months, that they have now gone, if they do not make a move, that would break a 5 or 6 year streak straight where they've done a trade deadline move. So at this point, it's bound to happen. And they actively today just announced that Ibaka is being sat until they move him. So the writing's on the wall. Got it. They're going to make a move, right? Roster's not that good around him, other than Ingles' impact lately. But is Budenholzer worthy of it because of the fact that Middleton hasn't been there and they're 29 and 17?
Yeah, I think when you bring that into consideration, obviously you have the best player in the world on the team. You should be 30 and 17. But when his Robin has been out for 90% of the games and you still find yourself sitting here as a 3 seed as we enter into February, I think that's fair to put him in that conversation. Now, again, kind of like with Mitchell, you've got Giannis. Come on. But I think that you brought up a great point there in Middleton. They've had Drew Holiday injured here and there as well. So I think that's an impressive coaching job to have them here. Again, you want to just look at Giannis and you say, okay, well, they win 2 out of every 3 games. But also when you look into it a little deeper, like you mentioned, another team missing key guys for a large part of the season. So I think that definitely falls under coaching as far as giving out credit for that.
All right. And then Doc Rivers, I said, was a unfortunate, obvious. And then in the West, I'll hit these really quick. Rockets, absolutely not. We'll talk about that in a minute. San Antonio, whatever. Portland, Darvin Ham, I can't unless they win 48 games, and that's just not happening. Even though I like the guy, and I think he's done a really, really good job with a 22 and 25 injury-riddled bad team. I forgot your head coach's name until literally yesterday. But I just think that's a guy that'll stick around, and people are going to realize his name in 3 years. Kind of the Taylor Jenkins effect, except it'll take 3 years longer for people to be like, oh my God, wait a minute, that's that guy? Anyway. But OKC's coach, unfortunately, just unless they may. Now, I will say, if they are the 6th seed, then I would think about it. I would maybe, when I do at the end of the year ones that 1, 2, 3, like the guy gets the award and I have 2 others, I think he might be the 3rd there. Kerr, can't give it to him. What's the guy's name in Utah? I'm already blanking at this point. Will. Oh my gosh. Hardy.
Taylor.
Hardy. Will
Hardy.
Hardy. I completely blanked already, and they're 24-25. Is Will Hardy the first one to have a conversation about? Is Will Hardy deserving, even though they're 24-25?
Yeah, because you tell me 24, then I tell you 50 something, not 25. So I think that's fair to put in there. And again, a team like Oklahoma City, if they clear the play in, you've really got to start looking at giving this team flowers in the form of year-end awards. And I think coaching is certainly one that would qualify.
Minnesota, I'm going to politely say no, only
No,
because of
you just
we'll
can't
talk
now.
about that in a minute. Expectation-wise, I just think it's hard to give them that 24-24. Phoenix, I can't give Monty Williams that unless they're a top 5 seed, 6 seed maybe, but top 5, they just
They've
aren't
got a
there.
host.
Injuries, yeah. Ty Lue, that's where it gets kind of funny.
I mean, do his players decide to play enough to put them in a position where we look at coaching as something to reward?
I hate that it's not his fault. That's why I'm bringing him up.
Right.
I love Ty Lue, and I like when we talk about Cleveland earlier with Bickerstaff. I can't imagine this team with Ty Lue, like with Cleveland with Ty Lue. Like I just think it would be amazing if they kept him for 3 more years. Like it just, there's so many what ifs there, but I think he deserves a conversation if he gets them right the last 35 games of the year.
Right. I mean, they're really just trying to show the NBA that we do not care about the regular season, and we're just gonna. You can come see us come playoff time. They sit 6th right now.
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to see them in a play, and I'll tell you that right now.
I wouldn't want to see them in anything right now.
No.
If they figure it out. The fact that you say like, oh well, and you made a perfect point. They're like, oh well, obviously we don't care about the regular season, and they're still a top 6 seed. They're going to not worry about the play in. It doesn't make any sense, and it's stupid. And I think it's less of a testament to them. It's more of a testament to the fact that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams right now with more than 20 wins in the West. That is 13 to with more than 20 or 25 to 20. I mean, so 13 all the way to Los Angeles and Dallas at 4 and 5. So 5. I'm trying to get this together. 5 to 13 are within a 4 game difference.
Right, they sit 6th,
Stupid.
and Portland in 13th is 2.5 games behind them. So I think that be very, very careful with punting these regular season games.
Yeah, Lou deserves it, and we'll talk about him in a few months because I think that's where it'll end up being. Dallas, Jason Kidd, 25 and 23. Same. I think it's the same argument as Lou. New Orleans, Willie Green. I would say if they figure it out injury wise, prayers.
They need Zion and Bi back, I think. But the fact that they're sitting here, I mean,
they're winning the random games they should. They're not losing to the bad teams when they've had both of them out. Obviously, they've had the whole year without Brandon Ingram, so that is what it is. This is the fun one. Mike Brown deserves every bit of this coach of the year conversation.
Goodness, yes.
They're 26 and 19. Well, I don't want to have a sackgasm because I think put that on a t-shirt. I don't want to have a sackgasm because I think I will have one in a few minutes. So I think Mike Brown deserves it, and I would like to say that Taylor. Yeah. I would like to say that Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone are obvious, and just keep moving.
Right.
35 minutes, and we agreed on every single pick except for Jack Font. So that's fun. Whatever. All right, new awards. Let's keep rolling. So new awards, I say this as a joke, but the new awards, I don't care what anyone says. I think the award names are stupid. I think you landlock unless you're going to take the Hakeem Olajuwon trophy away from him in 30 years when there's a guy that wins 40. Like, it is what it is. I'm not going to go down the rant. But the Jerry West Clutch Trophy Year Award I do think is really fascinating because I think that matters. And I think it's almost, and I thought of this morning and I wanted to bring it up, I think it's almost the NBA's like, wink wink or nut punch to the people that try to tank really, really hard now, i.e. like the teams that are obvious that we'll talk about in a minute. Like, oh, clutch games in the regular season do matter. This is a regular season award, which I think is the stupidest thing ever because why not give it to a team after the playoffs? But then no one cares because it's the finals MVP and that's it. So regardless, again, I hate to agree, but I would rather agree on this pick than every other one at this point. If you don't have De'Aaron Fox written down, I'm ending this Zoom call because his clutch stats don't make any sense. They legitimately, I'm just going to read the stat I had, and you can say whatever you want. Sacramento has given him 28% of their total year's field goal attempts in the last 5 minutes of a game in a 5-point game. They've given almost 30% of their shots this season in that range. That is actually technically not first, which is scary. LeBron and Jaylen Brown lead those categories, which I don't like to hear or read, but I do want to make it clear that De'Aaron Fox is the leader, is the clutch guy in that locker room, on that team, whatever. Shoots 60% from the field in the last 5 minutes of a 5-point game. That is it. I have been holding that in for 40 games because it has been a topic of conversation and it needed to be said. Anything you would love to add, I am all ears because he has been so much fun.
I mean, light the beam does not exist without De'Aaron Fox in these clutch situations. And I think there we go, turn it purple. I think that I mean, what more? Why would you make an award like this and not give it to the guy who clearly should be winning right now? I mean, like you said, we're halfway through, but I think that it would be very, very tough for even, my guy SGA to overtake him. Just how good he's been, the volume with which he's getting trusted with opportunities, and he's converting on them. And this Kings team, we mentioned, they're smack in the middle of the West right now. It's wide open. It's loaded. We've said it ad nauseum, but I just think that right now it's De'Aaron Fox and it's the field. And I think that that's, a product of one, like you mentioned, just the sheer amount of times he's getting trust with the ball late, and then what he's doing with it, which is really the spirit of the award. So I think that, yeah, it's De'Aaron Fox right now. Absolutely.
I would riot and burn a jersey if he didn't get the award. All right. The fact that only took 3 minutes, I'm really proud of. So, all NBA teams, this is where things start to get funky because I want to have plenty of time for the fun awards at the end because all rookie team is just unbelievably obvious. All NBA first team, again, there is good natural conversation that's going to happen here because of the way we looked at it. We talked about it for like 2 minutes before we started about how obviously most sites, essentially Basketball Reference, will take out games played. They don't actually tell you unless I'm blind, like what the games played threshold is, because they obviously the best part about Basketball Reference, no matter what site you use, shout out to StatMuse, but they will not tell you, or it will tier the fact that they will basically tier out the award as if the season ended. So like essentially Steph would have been out of whatever the average game would be because of injuries. Anthony Davis, same thing, right? I mentioned that to you. So I went with the assumption that Basketball Reference is keeping up with it through the end of the season. Which I think that's how it works. So there are some discrepancies in some of these, and that's okay because that should happen. But All NBA first team, I went with, and you've already sent me yours, so I do know what it is. I went with Luka, SGA, Tatum, Giannis, and Jokic because I think those are the 5 best players in the NBA this year. And again, if you had handed me a piece of paper at the beginning of the season and said that is going to be what the 45 game mark of the season is, I'd have been like, are the Thunder the 3 seed? excuse me? But no, 100% that is the 5. I really don't have any arguments other than Mitchell. But like, I can't back up anything I've said or reverse anything I've said. And there's a legit argument for all of those guys being 30-point per game scorers. First of all, I want to make that very clear. Talked about it last week with Queen City Control Room about the sheer. There was 1 30-point per game last year with Embiid. There's like 6 this year, and then all the other 20s. Right. But no, long story short, those 5 guys do deserve it. Luka, SGA, and I do have them listed guard-wise. So like we'll talk about the positions where I think it gets funny in a minute. But Luka guard, SGA guard, Tatum forward, Giannis forward, and Jokic at center because our MVP frontrunner should obviously be the guy playing the big there. So I know you don't have any discrepancies. So anything on those 5 players?
We're in lockstep, and you can keep all-star starter SGA as a first-team All-NBA guy. That would just be incredible. I would speak to the leap he has made, and whether or not it's MIP worthy, you can keep that too if he's first-team All-NBA. I don't care at that point. Luka, we mentioned, great way to give an individual guy flowers, even if the team around him not quite clicking yet. Christian Wood's been great, but that team, as we've mentioned a couple times now, just that's a wait and see right now. So I think Luka very deserving. We mentioned SGA a couple of times now. I think that this has just been an incredible start to the season for him, and I don't think we see him get shut down this year as we chase a play-in spot, even without Chet, like we've mentioned a couple of times. But yeah, those 2 guards for me, pretty easy. Unfortunately, Steph and his injuries have kind of backed him out of that conversation. Otherwise, that's a fascinating debate with 3 guys in 2 spots. But I think right now, as we sit, games played unfortunately factoring in, and it's those 2 right now. Jokic probably first, second, and third team at center, but we'll stick with first for now. Jason Tatum and Giannis. I mean, gotta get some East guys in here to join Luka. I think those are. I mean, Giannis I still think is the best player in the world, and then Jason Tatum's the best player on the 1 seed. So I think that's very, very deserving. So I am not surprised we're in lockstep here, and I'm looking forward to seeing if all 5 of these guys can hold on to these spots.
Yeah, the Steph thing's interesting. I'll address 2 things and we'll roll because it's a perfect segue into the second team. Steph would be the 3 guys 2 spots thing, but at the same time, I will just be clear that it's Luka and SGA for me, and I would not have had Steph there at all.
Oh yeah, I will not be moving beside my bias in this case. No, it's Shea.
I don't think it even is though. Like I told you how I felt from game 1, like game whatever it was at that point when we did week 1, but I think it's these five guys right now, and I don't think that unless an injury happens to any of these five guys, nothing like is changing that. I think these five will end up with that. Now, Steph could go on some stupid run and push
Right.
SGA out if
That's
they
why I
win
kind
more
of like I'm
games.
kind of
But
qualifying that like Steph Curry, first ballot unanimous Hall of Famer. There is definitely potential there for him to play his way in the first team, but it would just
yeah,
take
but
a
they
Herculean
don't
effort at this
mark
point.
down when you get like they mark down which team you get, but like ultimately on your record and your Hall of Fame resume, it's all NBA teams, not all NBA
Right.
first
It's
or
all
second team.
grouped into one.
So it's like okay, and honestly, this is just a testament to how public the voters are now. The NBA world has fallen in love with the fact that SGA has been the second best guard in the NBA this year,
Absolutely.
and that's public to everybody who can see it. And if I was a voter, I would be public about it, like I have been. So I think he's going to get it over Curry come any random thing. I'm not even gonna say it. But the other thing you said was Jokic first team, second team, third team, center. Every Philly fan, if there was any left by this point, has left. So now that they're not here, I have Embiid at center, and I'm gonna let you read the rest of yours because you probably also have Embiid there.
I do.
Who do you have?
Yeah.
Who do you have other than Embiid? Because that's where I think it gets interesting.
Yeah. All jokes aside, Joel Embiid is my second team center. I think that's pretty clear cut as well. Guard wise, I have Steph Curry here, just more so the belief that I think he will get here. I don't say if you ask me today, is he there? But I just think him having scarred my childhood throughout the years of the Thunder as a contender and now cycling back into it, I have too much respect for him as much as he's ruined my life to not put him in one of these teams. So I have him joined by Mitchell.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, Spida, second team guard as well. Getting into the forwards, I've got Durant and I've got LeBron. I think that those are two guys that certainly fall in this top 15 here. And I think in the top 10, as far as being second team, but not first team, is a great place to put the both of them. Durant coming back from an injury, but like Curry, I think he plays his way to this level. And LeBron, I mean, what more can you say about what he's doing at the point of the career he's in and how he's even more so than Westbrook responsible for his Lakers team having a chance bring AD back in the fold? They really contend in the West. That, again, as we mentioned, is really, really, really wide open, to be honest. So I think that as my second team five, not quite as confident in the staying power. And like I mentioned, I'm going to need Curry and Durant to come on with some injuries and make up for time missed. But I think that second team is where I'm feeling right now.
Not that I don't think he deserves it because you were like, well, I'm also projecting some of this for Curry. But I mean, even in the 20s, I think today would count as game 26. Even in the 26 games he's played, he has been really, really good. So I don't fault anyone for having him there. I would argue, and I'll get to third team in a minute, but I would argue him being third team right now, if we're giving right now, as our basis of why we did it. But everything else you went off of this year, so I can't discredit anything. Durant and LeBron, I'm not even going to comment on because I think it's 100% those two, regardless of Durant being out for a month. Mitchell, again, 100% in the MVP conversation. I think he was when Jokic got into the 60% predictor for the Basketball Reference MVP tracker model. When he got into the 60s officially recently, I think it was this week. Mitchell was the fifth guy on that list, which is crazy to think after, Jokic is the clear-cut favorite there. There's a bunch of guys really close after that, but Mitchell was in that conversation. The only discrepancy I have is I have Jaylen Brown there, and I think Jaylen Brown there is a testament to he is a big reason, not that most improved player is a worthy conversation, but a guy that is a top 15 player. And then the way you have to look at this is he a top 6 guard in the NBA right now? I think the answer is yes. Obviously, in that case, I think he's a top 4 guard. But a couple of things to back it up. He is 26.9 points per game, obviously stepping up anytime Tatum has missed any time. He obviously that's on 20 attempts, so the usage rate has gone up insanely. 33%, slightly down over last year, 78% from the line, 50% from the field. And then the same level of defender we've seen of his entire career, which I do think matters for these teams. They're not just stats. But I think Jaylen Brown has been deserving of that spot over Steph because he has played more games at that point. So any reason or why not Jaylen Brown shouldn't be there over Steph or anything in general?
No, I like that. If you're going to ask me a guy to put in place of Curry, it probably would be him. So I think that's a good little thing we have different. But obviously, I don't know if you can truly go wrong. But that's a great point as far as Jaylen Brown being top 6. He absolutely is as far as guards go in the NBA.
So who did I put him over is the question. Or who do we put him over is the question. I'm going to let you roll because I have something that will turn this thing upside down. And it is not anything I did. I'm going off of positional value, which is how it's listed or what the percentage of minutes at the position that they're listed is per year. So it's not like I'm reaching last year and being like, this guy played more minutes at this position. I'm going off of what this year's minutes are. So this is where I think we'll absolutely start going left and right and sideways.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's break this one a little slower. So who do you have at guard?
I've got Jaylen Brown, and I've got right now Ja Morant.
Okay. So the discrepancy that got weird was I told you I went off of if they were excluded from the minutes thing, then I just had to go with that. And that's what's leaving Anthony Davis off this list. That's a spoiler for the forwards. Yep. And it's also going to, unfortunately, leave Steph Curry off this list. So I went with Ja Morant and Fox. And I think I went with the fact that if we're going off of games played, impact to their team, points per game, minutes per game, a lot of the factors that typically get weighed into this award, I think undoubtedly – if you take Steph out of that equation, I think Luka, SGA, Mitchell, Brown, Ja, and Fox are the best 6 guards in the league. Now, that's what makes these fun is when Steph's there and he plays over 58 games. As long as he plays over that threshold, he's going to qualify for this award. So as long as all these guys do, which they're all on pace to do as of 3 weeks after the All-Star break, except for Steph, I do think 100% it's going to be one of these guys, which is why I went with Fox. I think he deserves that credit there. Obviously, I should have Steph. Let me just get that out of the way for the listeners that probably already disliked this video. And he's looming over my shoulder. But Ja and Fox, I think, deserve that conversation. Anything or any discrepancy there or anything about Fox that may be warranted?
No, I think, like you mentioned, I was a little more projection-based in having Curry in my teams. But if I were to drop him out completely, I think Fox is very, very qualified as a candidate to jump in, even in the third team.
Anyone else there? I think people would go with, okay, where's Damian Lillard? Where's Trae Young?
Kyrie Booker.
Irving, DeMar. Yeah, Booker. Again, games played, I had to just keep him off, and it hurt me.
Yeah.
DeMar was on that list. And at that point, I don't think it makes any sense. So who would, I guess, be the biggest snub if it wasn't Curry? Probably Dame.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just, death by small market there with him. I think that they've got exciting pieces there in Grant and Simons, but I just don't think he's reaching enough eyes to where that's really being considered for him. I think that, in an even world where everybody watches the West Coast every night, I think that he gets a lot more love. But I just where that Portland team is just tough. I go through it as a Thunder fan, trying to open eyes to guys we've got that are super talented, but no one's watching because they tip at 10 and, they're not contenders, frankly. So I think that's the biggest detriment. It's certainly not anything on the court. He hit one from the parking lot last night, going up big on the Lakers before they ultimately squandered that lead. And no, but I think, would I be surprised to see him third team All-NBA? Absolutely not. And I think that's where it gets tough with these third team guys because it's a lot more fluid. We feel pretty locked in about first team, second team is legends that just aren't quite top 5 this year. And then third team is guys, that's really where you start to see breakout guys. You can see some movement towards the end of the year. So I think Lillard, absolutely qualified. Do I think he gets it sitting here today? Probably not. But, like we said with Curry, if anyone's going to play their way onto it, it's those guys are at the top of that list.
Yeah, Trae Young's efficiencies are still down enough that I just don't think it makes sense. I don't even know why I'm bringing this up as a correlation, but especially for time's sake. But talking about hitting one from the parking lot, Zaire Williams literally hit one from the parking lot. Oh, that was wild.
Yeah.
Like 88 feet or whatever it ended up measuring out to be, or 87 feet. So he's obviously not going to be mentioned probably maybe ever on an All-NBA team. I don't want to say that now. That's obviously too early. But he's at least worth mentioning because that was nuts. I mean, I still can't fathom that he just made that and then walked off the court like nothing happened. Anyway, forwards, I went with Larry Marketing because I think I can't give him the MIP case if he isn't. I take that back. They are no correlation because MIPs don't normally make all NBA teams, but in the same year. But I do think he's been that good of a player, and I do think injuries and unfortunate level down of play, I do think there's a lull in forwards this year slightly. Maybe I'm being naive to the fact that I'm going to look at this list and just kind of hit a couple of them. Obviously, actually, I don't want to spoil that, so I'm going to be careful. But Laurie's obviously on there. It was basically the point I made with the West All-Stars in my video I made about it was I voted for Laurie over Anthony Davis and LeBron at the time because Zion was still playing and healthy. Laurie was playing better than LeBron consistently and winning games. the forward spot's just kind of weird when you get this far down, and I just think Laurie deserves it, and I just think I'd be dumb if I had a vote and didn't give it to him. So Laurie's one of them. Do you have Laurie? I guess I wanted to ask this for the sake of time.
Yep, I do. I've got him on there.
This is where it gets weird. Who do you have as your second one?
I've got DeRozan. I'm kind of cheating the positions. I just wanted to have a way to squeeze him in there.
I cheated on positions too. Get
okay,
it out
good.
now because you're
right,
gonna not believe mine. So because now you're gonna be like, wait a minute, what?
I realize things aren't going as planned in Chicago. Shout out to Billy Donovan for leaving a rebuild for a rebuild. At least it will be soon. So, visionary there. But I think that we've got to give DeRozan some flowers somehow. And I think that an All NBA nod is certainly a good way to do it. We're fudging a bit on positions here, but I think that in a perfect world, those won't be a disqualifier. For now, current model, I will fudge the numbers a bit as far as positions go, but yeah, give me DeMar DeRozan in that spot.
So
Thank
funny,
you, muted.
Yep. Yeah. So funny you say that. I am going to look right now because I don't know if you know this probably, but you can go and look up their positions
right by start. Yeah.
You said you fibbed on it. Let's see if you did. Let's just fully see if Basketball Reference.
I'm assuming.
So play-by-play, shooting, game high, playoffs. Oh my gosh, when you pull up a guy like DeMar DeRozan who's played for
it's forever.
Years, it's hard to
find.
It's a
mile long.
And I think it's listed under. I already lost it because that's how long his career's been. Advanced shooting, nope. Play-by-play. Here we go. You had him listed at what now? As a forward, right?
Yeah.
60% of his minutes were played at small forward this year. So you are.
There we go. All right.
I give anything over 51%. Like, all right, 51%.
I will take it. Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
I don't actually know what the voter. I don't know what the.
I don't know what the
cutoff
is either.
No. But it's probably got to be 50% or more. 38% at power forward, which is kind of wild.
That's wild. Yeah.
Small ball beside Vooch. God, that defensively sounds horrible. And then, funny enough, 2% of his minutes this year and 8% last year were played at center. The reason I'm glad you brought DeMar DeRozan. You actually gave me a little bit of a softball because I think this might blow people away. But when he has played, this player named Pascal Siakam is currently my center and my All-NBA team.
I like
and
that.
You're going to go, wait, what, excuse me? And then when you scroll down and you look at his percentage, he has played 69% of his minutes at center this year. So
wow.
A, they suck, and B, they're like, why the heck not? And it's qualified him now to be deserving he was last year. Did he officially get it last year? I don't remember. Let me scroll back up to the top and see. Two-time All-NBA is all it says. When you hover over it, it doesn't tell me what it is. 2020. So he did not officially get it last year. I think most of the voters bumped LeBron instead of him. Or bumped LeBron in. So long story short, Pascal Siakam has deserved it, even though he is the games played. It seems like it's a lot more. He's played 38 games, so he has deserved it. But just all in all, he has been the best player on that team, and the center part at that point, the only question I had for you so we could keep moving was the way I looked at it. He really did deserve it statistically, but would you have had Bam or Sabonis if you had to actually pick a center? Because obviously
I would say Sabonis personally, just because I love what the Kings are doing, and it's kind of it's a fresh take on it. Obviously the safe bet would be Bam, but I think I'm rewarding the team a bit in addition to the player. Both are deserving their third team, but I think that the Heat and the Kings are at very different points as we sit here as kind of a check mark halfway through. So I think that I will feed into the Beam narrative here. I'd slide Sabonis in there. Would I be surprised if Bam plays his way into that nod over him? Absolutely not. I think that just speaks to Bam as a player, especially defender. But I just think, guys like Siakam, Lillard, Bam, whose teams are unsuccessful in spite of their excellent play, I think it's tough to capture hearts and minds there, especially the story like the Kings. They're going to want to try and get Fox in here. They're going to want to try and get Sabonis in here and give them the flowers they deserve in the form of All NBA. So I think that's a good head-to-head matchup to keep an eye on as far as third team non goes.
Those are the two guys that absolutely should be the guys I should have considered. But
for sure,
for the minutes and for the sake of, I hope he does win it for the NBA casual to go, huh? I hope he gets
right.
the All-NBA because then they can look it up and figure out why. I had written down below, we don't have to talk about it, but Brown versus Ja for second versus third. And at the end of the day, I don't care what I wrote down. It's my list. I don't care. I think Brown's been better. So,
right. Yeah.
All rookie first team. Let's hit this really quick. Let's just go yes or no on agreeance, and then when we get to the fifth one, I think it'll be fun. Jaden Ivey, we both have 100%.
Yes.
Benedict Mathurin.
Yep.
Potentially could win Rookie of the Year
I was
and
about to say
Sixth
he's
Man of
in
the Year,
pen. Yeah.
which is nuts. So
Right.
he's at that point has to be on there. Keegan Murray, as of late, has really pushed his way on there. Not that he hasn't been, but I think there's been a clear top 3. He kind of became that 4th, even though he kind of was anyway. And then Paolo Banchero is obviously going to be that guy.
Right.
Who do you have as your number 5?
I went position based. I've got Walker Kessler just to have a center in there. I think that's, you know. Now, can I throw positions out and throw Jalen Williams in there? Sure. You don't have to tell me twice to be biased here, but I think that going off the same model as the normal All NBA teams, I think Kessler is the easy choice at center. And so I think that if we're going to use the same 2-guard, 2-forward center model, then it's going to have to be Kessler.
I don't remember if the rookie team makes you do that. I don't feel like it does for some reason in my head, but maybe we're wrong. But I went with Kessler also as of late. My 6th man would have been, or I guess my replacement, if it didn't matter, would have been Andrew Nembhard, only because of the efficiency he's had. I think that was kind of my bump. Was Williams' shooting numbers are just a little bit lower than a guy that I believe has
for Thunder tradition.
Than that. Yeah, but it was more about like, okay, they weren't even that great at Santa Clara, but it was the fact that he's given a lot of opportunity, and I just think if we're comparing him to Nembhard, that's really the biggest reason Nembhard would get it. Not that it matters, because that would be both guys are the first ones off the list.
Right.
I would with Kessler also for the sake of time. Let's hit the fun awards because I don't even care about what that clock says because I think these are fun. I tried to be as creative as possible, and then I realized that it's just not easy to figure out really odd things. Shout out to Tyler Parker of The Ringer for doing all these fun awards throughout the years for them, because he just always makes his league pass rankings are hysterical. He'll literally rank the most fun halftime celebration things. Like he is in it on another level. Shout out to Tyler Parker. But the award for wanting Wemby most, I'm really proud of that one, so I wanted to make sure I said it. AKA the most obvious tank team. I have 3 candidates. If you have another one, before you say your answer, give me your other ones. But I have Charlotte, San Antonio, and Houston as the 3 candidates. Let's do this end of the year Grammy style, whatever. But Charlotte, San Antonio, Houston, are there any debates or adds to that?
No, that's a firm top 3. I think that's fair.
There is a 4th one. I think I saw a list today of like the 4 worst record teams and something for Wemby, and I think it was Charlotte, San Antonio, Houston, and I'm forgetting the 4th one right now. Detroit. But I don't think they would want him.
No.
Okay, yes, they obviously want him. So, all right, you know what? Charlotte, San Antonio, Houston, Detroit. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
I went with San Antonio, and the reason alone I went with San Antonio is because 5 of their 14 wins came in the first 7 games, and otherwise they have been 3rd worst offensively and worst defensively, and Pop has made it very clear that he does not want to win because they are trying to move multiple people, and it is obviously their situation to lose right now, or to get for Victor Wembanyama, and I think that's who ultimately does probably get it for the sake of narrative and riggedness, but riggedness, whatever. San Antonio for me is the wanting Wemby most award because Houston actually just sucks, and Charlotte actually just sucks, and realize that they actually can go get him, so they want him now, but don't deserve the award.
Right. I think I've shown incredible restraint for an hour now as a Thunder fan. I've taken no shots at the Houston Rockets. This last 10 minutes will feature only that. The Houston Rockets are horrible. Their young core is not better than Oklahoma City. It might not be better than Orlando now. So I will take Houston Rockets, losers of 13 games in a row and counting. It will get to 30 if I had to guess. They are 10-36. They have no direction as a franchise. They have a lame duck head coach. And they have no hope because, honestly, what more Rockets think could you do than be the worst record in the league and then pick like 5th? So give me the Rockets. I hope and pray that they do not get him, but they are trying their hardest night in, night out to land him.
So funny you say that. I don't think that they're like the way I did this was the most obvious. Obvious was the key word. Again, shout out to Tyler Parker for that. But wanting Wemby most had to make sense. So I was like, the team that just sucks the most, it's definitely Houston. So if that's a separate award,
that's absolutely fair.
The coincidentally gets him because they suck award, whatever you want to call that, sure. No, I do think that they are probably a deserving candidate of this. I just think San Antonio's made it very obvious that they don't want to win. And I think that smoke at the beginning of the year was not a fire. That was just Pop trying not to lose his credibility. Not that these that I sent you are in any order, but we're going to pivot and we're going to go to, because you said it anyway, and it'll take 2 seconds. Should have been fired last month award. Couldn't come up with a more creative name than that. I do think that is still pretty funny. I have 3 candidates as well. I have Steven Silas. It is what it be.
We can stop there. Yes.
Yes, unfortunately. Steve Clifford. And then the reason I don't think we're stopping at Silas is because if this hadn't have happened 3 weeks ago, Nate McMillan is the guy that should have been fired a month ago. So let me be completely transparent. It is Nate McMillan's award. Like, that is the guy right now. But Silas has been undoubtedly a bad coach, and some of the presser stuff and like the conversation around, not that NBA Twitter and Rockets Twitter specifically is like the leading analysts in the world, but it's like he's watching a different team. It's like he's coaching a different team. It's like he's watching a different Şengün and not letting him do certain things in certain situations. So for the sake of the way I worded the award, it's Nate McMillan. But for the sake of the coach that first coach fired, let's do that. Like the NFL has it on the bet slip. I don't think the NBA actually has it on a bet slip most places, but should have been fired award would be Nate McMillan. I think we can agree on that. And the first coach fired, whether that be in any order, right? If no coaches have been fired yet, Nate McMillan, Steven Silas would be the first coach fired. Are we in agreement there?
Yeah, and it's not even that, like, I love the pile on the Rockets. It's all fun and games, but I think that there's a level of patience that's already been exercised with Silas and this Houston team. I just, like you said, it's like he watches a different game and then sits down at a press conference, and the disconnect is so vast some nights you wonder, what did he watch for 2.5 hours? I just, the Şengün stuff is just bad. He's a great player. I wish the Thunder had kept him. But I mean,
feel bad
it's
for
just
the core. You made the comment about the core.
I do too.
With the Orlando, like, this team gets
there is talent there.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
they've made
my draft ratings alone, I think they've made unbelievable picks the last 3 years, other than maybe Jabari Smith, but they were in the 3rd position. They had no choice.
You had to, yeah.
But like, they have good pieces. Like, these are all going to be guys that are going to be vying for all NBA and all All-Star positions. So like, it just sucks because I think he's actually the reason, and that's what sucks about this whole conversation. Is I don't want to do this in case this clip gets out there, but I'm going to do it anyway to be constructive as a media person. But my God, it is so disrespectful to his father to be this bad. Rest in peace.
That's
to his
true
father.
too.
But Paul, but God bless America. The NBA historian in me is burning up watching Silas play because I know his father is rolling over in his grave. God, don't cancel me, please. Steve Clifford is the only reason that might get cut out. I'll be honest with you, but Steve Clifford. Has to be mentioned. I mentioned it last week, and I'm gonna mention it again. Verbatim. If you heard it last week, if you didn't, I'll say it for the people who didn't. Verbatim. Shout out to James Plowright for being an awesome journalist. He asked him how he felt. I think it was LaMelo's defensive stats were, or LaMelo's defensive impact was. Yeah. And then he went, "Okay, interesting." And it was James asking him the question. It wasn't like some other reporter, and he's like, "Oh, just look it up." Goes home, posts the tweet, looked him up. They are all literally the entire across the board worse. So Steve Clifford, again, could have been talking off of a clipboard, could have not. I don't know, but stupid answer. Undoubtedly got him on this list. I don't think there's any other coaches. I think those are the 3. We can keep rolling. Biggest surprise team, how you determine that is completely up to you. This is your ballot.
I would just refer to the structure behind you, and that's purple in color, and I'm going to go with the Sacramento Kings. I mean, this podcast had an excellent segment named Saving Sacramento, and it was a joke because no one can save Sacramento, and it turns out yes you can.
Should have been paid for that. Should have
been paid for that. I would like to extend you guys credit for that even after the fact. But yeah, I mean, Mike Brown, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, a trade that they still may end up losing, but they've won, at least in the fact that for the Kings to still somehow find a silver lining out of trading a guy like Halliburton, I think is one, against the norm for that organization, and 2, it does inject some hope in a franchise that desperately needs it. And I think that, will they stick towards hosting a first-round series in the West? Maybe not, but I think they're firmly a playoff team. I would not be shocked at all if they remained above the 6 seed cutoff to avoid the play-in. And I think that, I mean, the definition of surprising is things you don't expect. And there's other teams like Utah, Oklahoma City, they're below them, also expected to be much, much worse. So I think it's only fair to give the Kings this nod.
Yeah, I have the exact same thing written down. It is what it is. I am going to look really fast to see where I had them officially in my personal rankings preseason. I had them at number 10. At number 10. So I can't even take credit for that alone because if I felt that way, then I should have been like, well, They should have been ranked over the Clippers, the Grizzlies, et cetera, et cetera. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But they do deserve the award for biggest surprise team because they've been unbelievable. And I think the 10 p.m. thing has been really cool because I've had more time to watch West Coast 10 o'clock tip games.
Right.
Because the Lakers have been at weird times for the first half of the year that weren't 10 o'clock. But I've been able to watch a lot of Kings and a lot of Nuggets games. And sometimes, depending on the score of the Lakers game, I have been watching them by choice. So that is okay. Most disappointing team, again, your ballot, your reasoning. Who do you have?
This is going to be a team. Excellent year last year. Came into the season, a lot of hope. A lot of things could have gone right. They have played 24 road games this year, and they have won 6 of them. And that is, speaking of 10 seeds, the Golden State Warriors. I mean, this is 6-18 on the road. I could guess 20 teams before I guess Golden State. I mean, that's just embarrassing. And I realize that these teams can get weird and there's splits that make no sense, but we're at a point where it's not a fluke. I mean, you're losing 2 out of every 3 road games. That's not sustainable. Where they sit in the West, they will be on the road the entirety of the West playoffs should they qualify for it via the play-in, which is what they're looking at right now. I mean, 6-18, I cannot get past that. And it was worse prior to the last couple weeks. They've kind of picked it up on the road, but it stuns me to see a team. I know they've had guys out and things happen like that, but I think that, and then just to pile onto that, the practice of punting games, Clippers style, and sitting like every player that's notable, and they somehow beat Cleveland. I'm not doing this, but I think that, not to yell at clouds here, but I think that that's one of the more embarrassing practices that's come to light in the era of resting players and injury reports coming out as guys come out for tip-off and things like that. I think that the Warriors have one of the biggest fan bases, if not online, but also in person. And to have, especially in Curry's home city, to have him sit out and play the G League team for a game, I think is a bit beneath them as a franchise that claims to be light years ahead still for some reason. So I think that, were they going to repeat the title easily? No. Were they really expected to come out of the West again? No. But to sit at the 10 spot at this juncture and be, I'll say it again, 6-18 on the road, I think is embarrassing for a team that's reached much higher highs and has rarely seen lows this low. Other than the year they just literally mailed it in and grabbed James Wiseman to really do nothing, honestly. So I think that most disappointing, compared to last year, but also as an organization where they usually sit. I think that to have Golden State at 23-24 is just disappointing. I can't really describe any other way.
Not that I'm not convinced by that. Anytime I get a chance to drag the Rudy Gobert trade Minnesota Timberwolves through the mud, I'm going to. All I'm going to say is that their expectations, they were going to be the second coming of Kevin Garnett's run in Minnesota in 2005, and at this point, it's stupid. One of the worst trades in NBA history. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the most disappointing team for me, but it is definitely the Golden State Warriors. Let's rapid fire the last couple of things for the sake of my computer imploding. One player you could have on your team, no trade, no free agency, does not matter. They magically appear on your team tomorrow morning.
This is a guy I've given a lot of flowers to over my appearances here, maybe off air even more. Give me Jared Allen. His rim protection, what he brings to that Cleveland team, what the Thunder really need. You put Jared Allen, we'll figure out Chet later. I mean, this Cavs team, with and without Jared Allen, those stats are very, very stark, even with the addition of Donovan Mitchell. I can almost look at a final score and tell you if Jared Allen plays or not. It's just because that's how much he means to this team. And I think that, not in a huge market, so I don't think he'd be too miserable out in Oklahoma City, at least if you ask Joe Kim Noah about Cleveland. So I think that, I would love to have a guy like Jared Allen in Oklahoma City. And, Chet could develop into a player better than that. But you ask me right now, I would love some shares of Jared Allen in Oklahoma City Blue.
My team stinks and needs a point guard, and why not take the best story up until his injury, a 20-10 guy on a team that should have been the worst team in the East, 50, 40, 90 type guy. Tyrese Halliburton would be unbelievable in the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that team would
be showtime
tomorrow. They would turn. I don't even care about the implication of the style of play. I think just sheer winning impact is what I was going for. My answer would be better if the Lakers were a 51 team this year, but they're not, and Tyrese Halliburton could essentially make them that. Last two things. Actually, last thing before we do finals prediction and national title pick, because that's what we do every time now with guests. But Most realistic Pirtle or Bogdanovich trade or both. And for the sake of talking this through, I have what I have written down and we can discuss it. I've been preaching that Denver needs to get Jakob Pirtle all year because they lack a true rim protector because DeAndre Jordan is literally just he's literally just turned into Boban, but not fun on the bench because he's old and not fun anymore. But their trade exception for Monty Morris was $9.125 million. Pirtle's contract is $9.398 million. They could literally throw in. It's been tit for tat what I've been preaching all year because of that. That alone, I mean, that just literally gets him in the deal, and they just throw in a first round pick and call it a day. Why they would hesitate on that, I have no idea. New GM maybe, but I think that's where he ends up, and I do think that's what I would like as well as what I think makes the most sense. So. Any other Pirtle destination or anything about Denver? If not, I'll give you Bogdanovich.
I love the Denver play. I can't think of a better one off the top of my head. You mentioned rim protection. That's one of the few weaknesses of this Denver team with Jokic in there. So I love that, adding to their best in the West squad at the moment.
Bogdanovich, I think the only two teams that make sense right now, and I don't even have a deal in front of me, so it might be a conversation for another day, but I think him, especially after a 34-point game tonight, he just doesn't belong on this Pistons team, dragging them to wins for no reason. If they don't get Victor Wembanyama because of him, it would be really, really bad for whoever the heck's in charge there anymore. I can't remember. But the Heat or the Bucks seem like the screaming obvious team to me. Why the Bucks would do it, I think it's dead obvious, but why the Pistons would take that, I think the Bucks would have to attach picks, and I think that's where it gets interesting because I don't think the Bucks have any asset value right now unless Grayson Allen's a valuable piece to the Pistons, which I don't – I think he's honestly more valuable to a Bucks run than he is to a Pistons team. So, and that's scary to say out loud. So I think the Bucks is less likely. I think he ultimately ends up on the Heat because I think they get desperate and want to get a winning piece next to Jimmy Butler. Any other teams? Because I know there are other ones out there that I have not mentioned.
I like those too. I mean, the Bucks makes a lot of sense. You just wonder what that return would look like to make it worth it for Detroit. Like you mentioned, the Heat needs something, maybe worse than Milwaukee does. So I think those are two, I'm sure, willing participants in trade talks. Now that we see it translate to a deal, who knows? But I certainly think that we do not see him at Detroit after the deadline because, like you mentioned, he is losing them. He's being a losing asset by winning them games, so they cannot have that.
My only other one I would consider maybe would be Dallas or New Orleans, but I think the deals are too complicated. I think for the sake of everything that is not complicated, Memphis has no reason because they're not going to give up any young guy. Philly maybe could get weird because then you start getting rid of like Harris, but then at that point, I don't even know what Harris is. I think Harris still has like 2 or 3 years left on his deal.
It'd be a quick buyout, yeah.
Or it would just be a long play for Detroit. I mean, obviously, former player there, that would be kind of weird. Now that I look at the standings again, those are the only two teams that actually make sense. I don't know why I even said that.
Yeah, I like those.
All right, finals prediction and national title pick, and we'll get out of here for the sake of listeners. Finals prediction first, then national title pick.
All right, I'll go safe and wild card. Give me the Boston Celtics and the Fighting Shannon Sharps. Give me the Memphis Grizzlies out of the West. I think the East is very top heavy. The West is very wide open. So I'm going to take the best team, in my opinion, in Boston out East, and then the team that, honestly, I'd love to see them make a deep playoff run. They've been flirting with it for a while now. Ran into Golden State last year. Impressed us all. The game 1 win against Utah the year before that. So give me the Grizzlies and my guy, Steven Adams, out of the Western Conference, and I will take the Celtics to win that series.
I have Nuggets Celtics, and I think I would have Celtics in 7, but I would have to think way too hard about that right now. So I'm just going to give you the solid answer of what I've been asking for all year pretty much. I think I wavered on the Bucks a couple times here and there, but Nuggets Celtics, it is what it is. National title pick for me.
This would have looked a lot better 2 days ago, but give me Houston, led by Marcus Sasser, Sampson at head coach. Lots to like there. This is a team we saw last year, impressed a lot of people in the tournament run. And just a very weird loss to Temple at home over the weekend. Dropped them from their number 1 perch, unfortunately. But maybe a bit of an eye-opener, kind of reset expectations there. You're not just going to cruise even in a non-Power 5 conference. So a little bit of refocusing there for them. But I think that there's a lot to like as far as their chances in March. If Tennessee somehow fires Rick Barnes midseason, I would say them because he's allergic to Final Fours. But I don't see that happening. So give me the Houston Cougars as your national champion.
As a as a new voter for the ECB podcast, I will go Houston as well. I did not drop them historically far. I did not drop them very, very hard. I think Houston is fine. I think they will figure it out. And for all of the people that said the American is actually sneaky good, you're welcome. That is what you got to see. Temple is what Temple is. All right, plugs, things you can find. Obviously, right here for YouTube. It's been right here the whole time. I didn't forget to change it this time after having a draft pod 2 weeks in a row. But 1009 podcast, all your stuff. Let them know where you can have it, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, so we're at the 1009 on Twitter. The 1009 podcast on YouTube, 1009 podcast app on Spotify. Those are our 2 listening platforms as well. So any way you guys reach us, we do appreciate it. Love coming on with Trevor. This podcast is where I really started this whole thing, gave me the inspiration to get on with my college buddies and start one of my own. So as always, I appreciate it and I enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to the second half of the NBA season.
Again, no, like I tell you every time, thank you for actually watching the NBA. It means a lot to me. So this has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. Don't forget to check out W Energy, link in description below, 10% off your order, or add 2 Pointers in your cart. 2 Pointers Podcast on all major platforms will be linked in the description below. Check out the 1009 Podcast and Grayson's stuff linked in the description below as well. Long-winded. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and Nikola Jokic is a 3-time MVP.